Hi, my name is Christine, and this is a presentation on writing effective learning objectives. In this presentation, I will discuss two frameworks of instructional design, Understanding by Design and Bloom's Taxonomy, and discuss how these frameworks can be used to write learning objectives in real world applications. UBD stands for Understanding by Design and is a framework for lesson planning that is intentional and geared to real world application through transfer of knowledge and skills learned. The term lesson planning is used loosely since the framework applies to the design of overarching themes more commonly thought of as units than individual lessons. The framework was developed by Mateague and Wiggins and expanded in a book of the same name in 1998. Teaching and assessing are conducted for understanding, and the lessons are designed with that end in mind, so the design approach is backwards. The reason backward design is so called is that it is purposeful design with the end goal in mind. Activity oriented or coverage oriented curriculum planning is avoided. Students learn why information is important and how it applies to life and work. Through UBD, students show understanding through facets of understanding, namely whether they may, quote, explain, interpret, apply, shift perspective, empathize, and self assess, end quote. Wiggins and McTeague, 2011. In this framework, the teacher is not merely an expert, but is a coach and guide. Curriculum is consistently monitored for alignment to design standards. The three stages of backward design are to define the desired results, plan for how evidence of achievement will be assessed, and create a learning plan. The three stages are aligned consistently throughout the design process. In stage one of backward design, the desired results are defined. What will students be able to know and or do as a result of the lesson? Essential questions are posed to identify statements of understanding. The knowledge and or skills students will learn are placed in context of a larger goal. What is the point of them knowing or being able to do something? Transfer, meaning making, and acquisition, TMA, refers to expectations related to goals defined in this stage. In stage two, assessment evidence is planned. How will teachers know students have achieved the desired results? Will students be able to perform a new task or otherwise apply knowledge and skills to new situations? This stage is where the facets of understanding listed above come into play. The facets of understanding will demonstrate achievement of goals. Stage two may make use of traditional assessments as well, such as quizzes, tests, and written responses. Stage three refers to planning learning experiences, which may include instruction. These activities must be aligned with the transfer, meaning making, and acquisition goals identified in stage one. Activities are aligned to the desired outcomes and assessment plans. They are not busy work. Learning activities allow room for students to make sense of material through drawing inferences and making generalizations on their own. An example of a learning objective created using UBD might be for students to critically evaluate a website within their discipline of study for credibility. Backward design would guide the creation of all relevant activities and resources needed for students to achieve the objective, but the first order of business would be to activate students' prior knowledge and interest in the subject. First, they might be led in a discussion of the importance of credibility and observations of the lack of it in several places online. What are the results of unreliable information? Students would be given the tools necessary for evaluation of websites, including the ability to identify criteria used to evaluate a website. Then they may be instructed to conduct the evaluation using one or more of the criteria. Examples may be given to guide students. Finally, students would use a tool for evaluation that included the learned criteria along with other elements like source citations and visual elements for a complete and thorough demonstration of practice skills. Bloom's taxonomy is also a framework, but a hierarchical one. This framework classifies knowledge and skills students practice through associated cognitive processes. The taxonomy was invented as an assessment tool in 1956 by educational psychologist Dr. Benjamin Bloom and revised in 2001 by Anderson and Krathwohl. Bloom's taxonomy continues to be used to classify types of learning. Most importantly for our class, the taxonomy assists in creating learning objectives at various cognitive levels and is helpful as both an assessment and design tool. In the taxonomy, activities associated with lower cognitive levels must be mastered before taking on objectives associated with higher levels. The taxonomy created a quote common language about learning goals, end quote, Krathwohl 2002. The original 6 categories of Bloom's taxonomy were knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. The revised taxonomy has create as the highest type of learning, formerly named synthesis. It is situated directly above evaluate. Knowledge is replaced with the verb remember and comprehension with understand. Notice that the levels of the taxonomy are expressed as verbs. David Krathwohl created a table to more easily evaluate learning objectives using Bloom's taxonomy by placing knowledge, representing the noun of a stated objective, on a vertical axis and the other verbs of the taxonomy on the horizontal axis, representing the cognitive processes associated with the stated objectives. Krathwohl placed the learning objectives on the appropriate intersection of horizontal and vertical axes based on the type of knowledge represented by the objective and how students would practice or learn the objective. The result was a visual representation of the rigor of the stated learning objective that assisted in ensuring alignment of the objective with appropriate activities and assessments. When placed in a table, there's a better sense of the objective's breadth and depth, answering the question, what kind of knowledge and what will learners do with it? This type of evaluation is important because it's recognized that the most important cognitive processes, or the most rigorous cognitive processes, are represented by Bloom's taxonomy in the apply through create levels. There are many resources that help designers and teachers refine learning objectives by choosing verbs that correspond to a particular level of Bloom's taxonomy. These are clustered together and represent ranges of cognitive processes that are appropriate to tasks categorized by the taxonomy. Using these tools and finding the right words keeps objectives aligned and relevant to desired outcomes. Here are some examples of learning objectives written using verbs associated with the analyzed level of Bloom's taxonomy. I will apply backward design and Bloom's taxonomy to a training needed in my field of interest, college advising. My project, using motivational interviewing as an academic advisor. How do you do it? I'd like to intentionally use motivational interviewing as a model of academic advising, specifically to establish that model in the first meeting with students. To that end, I'd like to prepare academic advisors to understand motivational interviewing and how to use it to initiate a positive advising relationship. Here are the objectives relevant to that end. 1. Define motivational interviewing. 2. State the limitations of the advising context by A. Describing the advisor's role, B. Describing the student's role, C. Analyze through written and verbal feedback the limitations of services that are provided in the advising relationship. 3. Identify and discuss related campus services. 4. Create 3 goals as an advisor for the initial advising session. These objectives are represented by the remember, understand, and analyze levels of Bloom's, except for the last one, which is okay because it's okay that most of the objectives represent the lower level of Bloom's taxonomy because they are preparatory in nature. The advisor will apply and have a chance to be evaluated during and after the initial advising session. My next step is to decide how I will assess achievement of these objectives and then design related materials and learning activities to achieve them.